Retro.
Hi, this is Fred Tatasciore, and you're listening to Dennis and Jay on Podcast Stardust. The Force is strong with both of them.
Welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithley.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
And it's the end of another week, so that means we're going to get ready to wrap up the week's Star Wars news. But before we get into that, Jay, I want to remind everybody where we can be found on social media.
You got it, Dennis. As usual, we can be conveniently found on Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust.
Okay, the digital line, the signal's boosted to maximum output, the shield is down, and we are now broadcasting to the galaxy. So we're going to skip right ahead to television and Disney Plus news because it was the darndest thing, Jay. I was sitting down this morning to write the notes, and all of a sudden the phone rang, and it was Lucasfilm PR. And they said, you guys got anything to talk about for tonight? And I was like, no, it's kind of light. And they said, well, here we go. And all of a sudden they announced from Dave Filoni that they're making season 2. Well, that's not how it happened. But at any rate, there has been an announcement.
I love it that you say it like that, though, because that makes it more fun.
Yeah, I can only do that joke so many times. And I think that's the third time I've done it. So anyway, but they've announced that season 2 of Maul has already been picked up and is in production. And of course, we all know that Maul debuts on Monday of next week. So what do you think about this? I mean, obviously, more Star Wars content is great, but what do you think of the announcement?
Bold move, Cotton. But no, seriously, this is basically them just saying, we know what we have. You know, I mean, it's fantastic. And I just think that, oh my gosh, this just means that, like, you don't greenlight something like this unless this story needs time to unfold. And so that's so exciting that there's more stories to be told, that there's more depth to be, dove into. And yeah, we're going to be getting a lot more Maul.
Yeah.
We love it.
Here was the thing. It's like, I am both surprised and not surprised at the same time. And I know that makes no sense, but bear with me for just a second. First off, the way they've been setting up Maul, I could have easily seen it as one season of 10 episodes telling a very specific story and as a limited series. And that would have made complete sense. What was it that Maul did after the Clone Wars? Last we saw him, he was being taken into custody by the Republic after Ahsoka defeated him at the Siege of Mandalore, right? Mm-hmm. And then he was like getting away. And so this kind of would build off that. And we've got all these great stories, from Rebels and the like. So I could totally see them have just doing one limited season of this. And well, everything we've seen so far is awesome. And that would have been great with that. But it also makes sense that they go the multiple season routes. Like, Bad Batch was 3 seasons. And so go something like, Rebels was effectively, 3.5 and the like, that you do these multiple season arcs. But I'm very excited by this because like I just said, everything I've seen from Maul has just been really, really fantastic. And I cannot wait till Monday night when I can sit down and watch these first 2 episodes.
Well, I'll tell you what, their PR people have knocked this out of the park. Some of these promotions that they've been putting out and the way that they've been cutting it together with the music, and especially with some of like the techno EDM kind of feel in this last one, almost really dubsteppy. I was like, oh man, they are just really knocking it out of the park right now with all of this stuff. This is fantastic. I will say though, I'm a little bit surprised that they announced season 2 now, like before we even get the first episode to drop. I kind of thought that if there was going to be a season 2, that this would have been a May the 4th type of announcement. But I mean, hey, we'll take it when we can get it. That's for sure.
I'm guessing that was probably their intent, but it somehow leaked. So rather than letting somebody else announce it, they did it themselves.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And this is also Dave Filoni's like first big announcement as president of Lucasfilm.
That's true. It is. So excited. So excited for him.
So I think that might have had something to do with it. Well, like this first big announcement they're going to make about future content as him as president, he needed to make it. He needed to be one that was in the press releases as opposed to letting it get out there through Variety, Vanity Fair, Deadspin, Hollywood Reporter and the like. But this way, his name is attached to it and he can control that. And yeah, and you're right. They've got to be confident in this, this Maul character. And we're going to get into some of this other reporting here in just a second. We're going to talk about Maul a lot. And this news episode is so popular with fans and it does drive interest right now. So why would you not? If you got a good product going, keep it up.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
With that said, if you go to StarWars.com, you can find a small article that talks about our two main characters from Maul Shadow Lord. And there's a bunch of quotes here, and we get Sam Witwer talking about Maul. We've got Gideon Adlin talking about Devin Nazara, and we got Dave Filoni making some comments, and the writer Matthew Miknovitz, that's a hard name to pronounce, Miknovitz, has also got some thoughts over there. But I wanted to touch on this just a bit. I don't know that there's a lot that's brand new, but there's some interesting things that are said here. And so we're going to go through some of these quotes and kind of give our reactions to them. But up first, Dave Filoni leads off by talking about how, and this is a quote, "I think people feel bad for Maul because he's so relatable. He makes mistakes. He's not perfect. He desires power, and then he gets toppled. That's relatable. We all probably feel like that when we have a low moment. He just doesn't deal with it well. He keeps trying to attack his problems the same way. He can't ever let go of his hatred and anger." So what do you think about that? I mean, you agree he's relatable?
I think in some ways, yeah. I think of him as sort of my version of Tahiri Vela for the masses of Star Wars, in that he is a beautiful disaster. And this just, for me, reinforces the whole idea that we talk about a lot when I bring up the idea of Maul being this sort of mythical Sisyphus type character. When Filoni says he keeps trying to attack his problems the same way, that is rolling the boulder up the hill and letting it fall right back down. So, he's just doing it with a lightsaber. I mean, they say that is the definition of insanity, though, is doing the same thing again and again, the same way, and expecting a different result. And that's Maul in a nutshell. And so I think there's some parts of that people can relate to. And there's so many other things about his story. You look at his whole trauma thread of things, and you look at the way that he is looked for acceptance, and he's been cast aside, and all of the things that he's had to claw himself up from the bottom, literally, and rebuild for himself. So I think there's a kernel of that for all of us in, that fight that he puts up. I don't know about the evil part, but I think there's definitely some truth in that. But how do you feel about it?
You basically said what I wanted to say in a different way, which is there's a kernel of truth to that. I don't know that I can agree that Maul is wholly relatable because, and this will get to a comment that Sam Witwer made in just a second, but I think people feel bad for Maul because he's so relatable. I don't know. When we met Maul, he was an assassin tracking down the Queen and trying to destroy the Jedi and stuff like that. Can't relate to that. The way he deals with his problems is completely not relatable. We all get angry at times and sometimes we lose control of our emotions, but I have never ran the love of my opponent through with a lightsaber as a response to frustration and the like. So
I have neither.
Yeah, I thought I knew you well, and I'm pretty glad to hear that you've not done that. But yes, I do think there's a kernel of truth to that we see a guy who was discarded, and we've all been discarded, by the not by the Emperor, but we've felt that rejection in the past. We've seen our attempts to build something and create something get destroyed. and then we attempt to impose our will on things, and it doesn't work out. And he's trying to do it on a bigger scale in that case. So I agree with that, but it just, the first time I read that, I was like, well, that's a pretty big claim, Dave, to say that he's so relatable. But I get where he's going with that. But
Sure.
some additional comments from this article over on StarWars.com. Sam Witwer talks about how this version of Maul is still reeling from the loss of his brother Savage Press and Mother Talzin, not so far in the distant past. In this new world order, Maul finds an opening for his machinations with the seedy underbelly of Janix among the underworld kingpins. And here's the real quote. In Maul, he has a crew of very colorful, interesting characters. For me, it was a promise that we were going to dig into Maul and answer the questions of how he changed so drastically into the Rebels version of the character. And then he goes on to say he has the same type of feelings that you and I have, but he doesn't have the tools to express those. All he has in front of him are super villain tools. So, yeah, I mean, I think when you couple what Witwer said there with what Filoni said before, it makes a lot more sense. That
Sure.
he's got big plans, but when he loses, he doesn't have the coping mechanisms that we do. He doesn't even try, and I probably isn't even interested in those coping mechanisms.
Right. Well, I mean, let's face it, he hasn't exactly had the greatest of people to surround him in supporting things in a very healthy way, psychologically or emotionally. That's for sure. But my big takeaway from this, though, is Sam Witwer saying that we get to see all these very colorful, interesting characters. And we know that this is going to be set up kind of like a noir sort of series and almost in a very serial sort of way. And so that one phrase right there just gets me so excited for all of the almost like the Saturday morning serial type things that, maybe we'll get out of this with every episode. So, we talked about this being very episodic in that, is it going to truly carry over from one episode to the next to the next? Yeah, I think there's definitely going to be some things that tie it together. But then I also think that this kind of lends into the idea that maybe there will be more of a wrap it up kind of feeling at the end of each episode as well. But what do you think?
Hard to say. I'm looking at the trailers for this that we've seen so far, and we know our big characters are Maul and Devin Azara. And just, I'm getting the feeling that there is, yes, I think there's going to be, as I'm talking this out, I think there's probably going to be an overarching story across the 10 episodes, but then individual obstacles to be taken care of every couple episodes in that regard. I don't, so maybe it's not episodic, but maybe it's going to be handled like they do with the Clone Wars, where it may be 2 episodes or 3 episodes for an arc to get through stuff.
Yeah, and I like that. I like that style of storytelling. But I hope that they do it in a time manner where it follows, A to B to C. Whereas, as we know with the Clone Wars, it sort of jumped around all over the place. And I think a lot of that was just because the way that they told the story. But I think they have a much clearer map, I guess you could say, of how they want this story to be told, I think, from all. And that's pretty exciting.
Sure. So the next quote we get out of this is from Dave Filoni, who describes Maul this way. He says, he's charismatic, amazingly powerful, and talented. These are all appealing things. And frankly, that quote should have been up there with the first one about how he's so relatable, because I think those things are the bigger draw for Maul than maybe the relatable things on this character. Because when just thinking back to the Phantom Menace, when we first saw that trailer and Maul shows up as those hangar doors open and then he ignites the double-bladed lightsaber, when you saw that trailer in theaters, you got you had the big ooh experience there, right? And then the fight scenes from the Phantom Menace were so next level compared to what we saw in the Star Wars movies that preceded it. And just the buzz that came out when we got that character back in the Clone Wars. And we got, he had more dialogue than ever. He was so menacing. The voice that Witwer does for him, it's just one of those things where it's like they found the perfect combination, right? You have the voice actor to play that role. It's, same thing happens with Hondo Ohnaka, and same thing, countless characters in Star Wars. You get just the right actor for those things. And I think those are things that really make him so popular with Star Wars fans.
Yes, and he is charismatic. I mean, that's one of
Mhm.
the number one things I think that does draw people to him is that he is and, as Dave said, amazingly powerful and talented, and I would also add to that, like I like to say about Maul, he is wicked smart.
Mhm.
And and what's really exciting, I think, about this particular way that we're gonna get to see Maul is that we're gonna get to see him kind of in his most human. And that's what's gonna make him the most dangerous too, I think. And so
Mhm.
I think that maybe that's where the relatable part comes in a little bit more, maybe from Dave throwing that in there. And so, yeah. Oh, so good. So good.
Right. Indeed, indeed. And then turning to Devin Azara, of course, the Twi'lek Padawan that's in this show. Gideon Adlin goes on to talk about her that Devin Azara is a Jedi in a post-Order 66 world, and she is filled with great angst. She's a teenage girl living in a world where she's trying to decipher right from wrong. That, I think, speaks to the experience of every teenager in some
Angst?
fashion.
A
Yeah.
little bit.
Um,
Yes.
yeah, the deciphering right from wrong as well. I mean,
Sure.
you have to grow up fast as a teenager, and you get presented with a steady diet of more and more responsibility as you take over your own life, and you don't necessarily have all the tools to do that. And when
That's
you
true.
throw Order 66 for a Jedi on top of that, I could see how that would be a super challenge.
Yes,
And
and
then,
I have to say that for Devin Azar, this is going to be one of those characters I think that is not going to be treading lightly on the Star Wars mythos. She's
yeah,
gonna make her mark. I just feel like this is a character that is going to have lasting impressions on all of us.
yes. And here's the thing I was thinking about, because to pull back the curtain, we're getting ready to discuss 2 episodes of the Clone Wars in our next couple episodes. And I watched this or read this interview, and then I was thinking about the Clone Wars, and I was like, I feel an intrigue for this character the same way we did for Ahsoka before we got to know her, which
Mhm.
is, who is this Padawan that we've never met before, didn't show up in any other movies or anywhere else? So what is the ultimate fate of this character going to be? Because
Yes.
we all expected at any episode or any season for years for that to be it for Ahsoka. Only, to find out that Lucasfilm, Dave Filoni, and the likes all came with creative ways to keep her alive in the background and then tease us with her fate over the
Mhm.
years on top of that. So I kind of wonder if we're going to get something similar with this character.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm even gonna go a step further and just really make a big kind of prediction to say that she just might be one of the most important Force users that we've seen in a long time.
Could be,
And
could be.
yeah, I don't know, there's just something about this character that, yeah, I think she's gonna be around for a while.
Right. And then the last comment we got is from Matthew McNavets, who says that Maul and Devin is one of the most important relationships in the series, and we're excited for fans to see it. This is not going to go the way you think it is. So I don't know exactly what that means. I mean, the way I think it's going to go is that Maul is going to attempt to recruit her as an apprentice, and she's initially going to go along with it, only to ultimately reject him. And that's the last we'll see of that character, whether it's in season 1, season 2, or 3, or whenever. But I'm curious to see if that holds up, or if it really is going to be something surprising.
Yeah, and where else have we heard that quote, "This is not going to go the way you think"?
We've heard it a time or two, that's for certain.
Yes, we have.
All right. So there's been a lot of teasers for Maul, especially as we're getting so close to its release next week. And we could have talked about a bunch of them, but most of them cover things that we've already seen. There are clips of other pieces of footage with not a whole lot new thrown in there, or certainly not a lot that tells us more about anything in Star Wars. But I found this one and I just absolutely loved it. And so we need to talk about it. It's just 36 seconds long, and it starts off with a stumbling Maul, and you hear the voice of Palpatine in the background saying, "You have been replaced," which comes right out of the Clone Wars. I want to say that was season 5, episode 16, which we'll be talking about just a bit more
Mhm.
in here in a second. But then he picks himself up, and we start to see a number of scenes where he's fighting through his enemies, including a couple of the Inquisitors. But what makes this little teaser so cool is while he's doing this, he is talking to himself with this new mantra: I master the Force and the Force serves me. I master the Force and the Force serves me. Over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And it's just such a clear, dark mirror reflection of Chirrut Imwe's I am one with the Force and the Force is with me. But
Oh,
the
yeah.
Sith version is I master the Force and the Force serves me. This was brilliant. This was
Oh,
so
yeah.
cool.
Absolutely. And you see it getting closer and closer and closer until the point where all you see is like a close up of Maul's skin with his tattoos.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just zeroes right in on him. But I'm wondering, is this just a Maul thing or is this something that he's drudging up from, like you said, the Sith, that this is been a mantra that's been out there and he's resurrecting it in a way? Or is this just him coming up with this? Either way, it's so awesome.
I don't know for certain. My instinct is telling me this is a Sith thing,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll find out more about it as we get into the show. But I don't care. As the way they tease it, it's just I just love it because we're all so familiar with the I am one with the Force and the Force was with me
Right.
mantra, that this has the same cadence and the same rhythm there, and it is the obvious dark side reflection of that line. And for them to think that, the dark siders, just like there's a Jedi code and a Sith code, we've been talking about that a bit in our Darth Bane coverage, for them to come up with this and integrate it into the show was a brilliant move, because it just calls to mind all those other aspects of Star Wars that we all know so well.
Oh, for sure. I mean, the whole idea of, the yin yang kind of light, dark. And then, of course, you have the Jedi code and the Sith code. So there should be a different mantra. And
Mhm,
whew, it was, like you said, just gives you the chills hearing him say it.
mhm, mhm. And then I found this behind the scenes commentary about Maul from Dave Filoni, and it focuses on an episode of the Clone Wars and an episode of Rebels. So, as I was just hinting at a bit earlier, the episode he talks about from the Clone Wars is from season 5, episode 16, which is called The Lawless. And this is part of the Mandalore arc where Maul's essentially conquered the planet with the Death Watch and his criminal cartel that he's built. But at the end of that episode, Sidious shows up, and Dave has some interesting things to say about that this is something that they've been wanting to do for a while, but they had to wait until they could get the animation right for Sidious, because they couldn't get his cloak to work right. They didn't have that model developed. And so Sidious had always been portrayed in a hologram
Mm-hmm.
prior to that. So that was pretty good. And so they had to make sure that Sidious looked good. And then they also had to be very careful with this, because they didn't want to risk changing how he appeared or how that character was interpreted in the movies with these scenes. But it was important to George Lucas and important to them that they give Star Wars fans some idea about how the rule of two works in all this. So
Yes.
we're seeing that classic fight between Sidious on one side and Maul and Savage Opress on the other throughout all of this. And we just get all the stellar commentary from Dave Filoni while it's happening. As much as I love all those little featurettes he puts on that they got for him on StarWars.com and the episode guides, this was just, I could listen to him do this for every episode, just all
Mm-hmm.
episode long. Give us the supervising director commentary from Dave Filoni for every episode. I would just love to hear it.
Well, I hope that they do. And, that's something that we really missed quite a bit, over the years, is just
Mhm.
having Dave basically talk to us about how things came to be and what the creative process was and why they made the decisions that they made. And, it's harkening back to those featurettes that we got in the Clone Wars, which of course we're going through our own Clone Wars rewatch right now. And, I'm just thinking ahead as we're discussing our Mortis arc and just watching those. This is very reminiscent of that.
Mhm.
And just the fact that, Dave has always been very cognizant and intentional about the way that he does things and preserving the way that George did it.
Mhm.
And I just think that that's so important. And I'm not saying that those that have come since have thrown things out the window. I know some people would argue that, but I do think that realistically Dave is the best at that. And he has his own ideas, yeah, and he wants to break ground and he wants to do some things that are outside of the box, but I mean at the end of the day, he preserves what the soul of Star Wars is. And I
Yeah.
respect that so much.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he worked so closely with George Lucas on this
Right.
series, so
Yeah.
makes sense. But here's like the big takeaway from this entire fight is that he was pointing out that Maul and Oppress really had no chance of beating Sidious because Sidious is always willing to go lower than they are. That while Maul is an even evil guy, he's not quite as evil as Sidious is
Mhm.
in this. And Sidious doesn't have any compassion, but he's he's not just going to kill Maul because he's got other plans for him, which he says, "Oh, I'm not going to kill you. Don't. Yeah, I've got other plans for you." I can't remember exactly how that line goes there, but that again, it was this notion that as many despicable things as Maul has done, and we've talked about a few of them over the course of this conversation. There's still some things that some places he hasn't gone that Sidious is willing to go in the course of a fight, and
Oh,
so
yeah.
that was illustrative.
Oh, that was
Um,
awesome. And just the fact
yeah.
that Sidious basically showed up to reassert the rule too,
Mhm.
and to kind of put Maul in his place.
Yeah. You have been replaced and you are
Yes.
no longer my apprentice. So, he got rid of Maul's own apprentice and then basically confirmed to Maul that you have no shot at getting your spot back and
Mhm.
I'm going to use you in some other way. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
so love that episode. Can't wait till
That's
next
so
time you and I
good.
get to talk about it. But
Mhm.
then he turns the discussion to episode 22 from season 2 of Rebels, which is Twilight of the Apprentice Part 2. And a couple things that stood out to me from this discussion here is he talked about how Maul's design in Rebels was a little different, and he said it's a little bit more fun and stylized from the Clone Wars, and that his face is more of a Japanese demon mask style, which he called Hanya, which I have to admit I'm not particularly familiar with that, but yeah, there is a clear difference in the way
Mhm.
that he was illustrated. Now, I think when he talks about the Rebels animation, a lot of it was like based off the old Kenner toys and stuff with the way they designed a lot of things, but
Yes.
this goes beyond that.
It does. And, it's crazy how different it is when you look at them sort of side by side or
Mm.
back to back, I guess is the best way to describe it, where you're seeing Maul in the Clone Wars and then you're seeing him in Rebels. And when you're watching Rebels, I guess you didn't really think about how different he was in the way that he was stylized in that way. But now that you see it, it's such a stark, obvious kind of thing.
Mhm, mhm. And then the other thing he focuses on there, and this I was glad he talked about because I think we're looking at something similar with the way he's going to be treating Devin Azara in Maul. But that this was the episode where they're on Malachor, and the Inquisitors have shown up there, and we've got Kanan and Ezra, Ahsoka, and Maul essentially against the Inquisitors. And this entire time, Maul is trying to push Ezra over the edge. Ezra's looking for more power to defend his family, but he's not really looking for um, dark side powers. He's not looking for that type of things, but he sees this as an opportunity to get the power he thinks he needs. And as Dave Filoni, talks about it, Maul's willing to do things he won't because misery loves company. And so that's why he wants
Mhm.
to push him over the edge. And then Filoni also points out that Maul's the only one that directly kills any of the Inquisitors in that episode,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I hadn't really thought about until he said that.
Exactly. I know that's why I'm sitting here like dumbfounded because I actually had to rewind that and listen to it again and I thought, "Oh my gosh, is that right? That no
Mm.
one ever killed the Inquisitors except for Maul?" And, yeah, that is the case. And a lot of that goes because as Dave was talking about the way that the good guys are characterized in Rebels is that, they're not supposed to be the ones that strike people down,
Right.
as Maul does, and the good guys just don't do that. But Maul, he chops down, well, not chops down, but he brings down the seventh sister, the fifth sister, and or fifth brother, and then the eighth brother dies because his helicopter fails, essentially.
Yeah. It's
So
Hellblade.
yeah, it's crazy to think about that he was the only one that was directly responsible for that. I don't know,
Yeah.
that blew my mind. Yeah.
Yeah. And now, of course, when we get to Ahsoka defeats Marok in
Mhm.
battle and destroys
Mhm.
him, and then she kills Morgan Elsbeth too. So
Right.
something
Right.
changed along the way. But
And it's when you think about Maul facing Inquisitors, how do you think he feels about Inquisitors? Because he's got to be looking at them like, you're filth. You're like,
well,
what
yeah.
are you doing?
Well, believe he thinks that they're inferior, that they're not actual Sith. He had the opportunity to be a Sith, and before he was cast out, and they aren't that. They're kept at a rung below the Sith, and so yeah, I'm certain he feels superior. And given what we've heard of him say about the Empire, the Empire tried to kill me, and he's going to get his revenge, but he needs a weapon. I think he sees attacking the Inquisitors as taking it out on the Empire.
Mhm.
They're the de facto Empire when he's fighting them. So
Yeah. Yeah, and he's
yeah,
he's fighting to erase them, basically.
yeah.
Whew.
I'm so excited for Maul. I can't wait. So
Oh, this is gonna be a great series.
yeah, yeah. So and we'll be covering it in the coming weeks. With that being said, we are going to switch up our release schedule. Normally we do the news on Friday, and then we do our Clone Wars discussions on Monday. But since new episodes of Maul Shadow Lord are coming out on Monday nights, we are going to flip that so that we'll be discussing those the Friday of the week they came out, and then we'll be discussing the news on Monday. So the news might not be quite as fresh, but I don't think it's going to matter too much right now. Of course, this will all be over before the release of The Mandalorian and Grogu, so I don't think it's going to matter. But just want to give everyone a heads up. So, anyway, thank you all for joining us for this episode of Podcast Stardust and this discussion of Star Wars news. So mainly talked about Maul Shadow Lord the entire time, but consider this a preview. And with that having been said, we hope you enjoyed the discussion. And if so, we'd love it if you subscribe to the podcast if you haven't done so already. We're available on all the various platforms. And if we're not, let me know and I'll figure out how to get us there. And we always appreciate your ratings and reviews. And if you want to find all the back episodes of the show, one of the best places you can do that is over at retrozap.com, where you can find all previous 1015 episodes. Special shout out to the Animaniacast. They just released a new episode for the first time, I think in like a year and a half, 2 years or so.
Awesome.
This past week, yeah, they're covering Bonkers right now and other things in the Toon universe. I can't remember how that they put it, so I listened to a little bit of that today, and it was good to hear them back. Jay, I want to go ahead and remind everybody what the rest of our social media contacts are.
Absolutely. So we are at Podcast Stardust on all of your socials, including Facebook and Instagram. We also have some Pinterest boards for you to check out. And then we also have our 2 YouTube outlets, which includes both the traditional YouTube as well as YouTube Music. So please head over to both of those, like, subscribe, and share those out. We're also on Audible and Spotify. And like Dennis said, if there's somewhere that you'd like to listen to us and you're not finding us, we need to fix that. So please let us know. So you can drop us a line at podcaststardust@gmail.com. Or if there's anything else that's just not suitable for a Instagram message or the like, please do that there. And then if you'd like to support us even further, you can pick up one of our products over on TeePublic. We have 7 different show logo designs to pick from, and we have everything from apparel and coffee mugs and the like. And so you're bound to find something that you like.
All right. What you got going on in cosplay?
Well, over on my Instagram is j.snipscosplay, and I'm over there mostly as Ahsoka, but you can also catch me as Hera, 2 different versions, as well as the fourth sister, my original concept Mandalorian, and some other things. So been doing a lot of Ahsoka here lately, and I'm definitely going to be doing that throughout the spring. I've got a couple of different events and a photo shoot actually planned here coming up very soon. So you're going to be seeing a lot more of Ahsoka over there.
All right. So upcoming on the show, it's all animation next week. On Monday and Wednesday, we're going to be getting into the second and third episodes from the Mortis trilogy because we wanted to get that finished up before we got into Maul. And then on Friday, we'll be covering those first 2 episodes of Maul Shadowlord. I cannot wait for that discussion.
Yeah.
And so like I said, we're going to be doing those on Fridays until the series concludes. So with that, thanks for listening to episode 1016 of Podcast Stardust. Have a great weekend. And until next time, may the Force be with you.